Hi, everybody, and welcome to session number 2. I know we're not live, but we didn't want to disappoint anybody. Again, you've given us just a huge amount of questions, really great questions. Our session last week was awesome. Some really thought-provoking questions. We've got some new series of questions for today's program. So, and I've got to say that we will be returning on August 8th to live Q&A. So we've got, we've not including this, we've got another 2 sessions where we're just going to be answering questions. So again, stay tuned. We don't want you to miss anything, and we will be back on the 8th of August. All right, having said that, I think we just need to get right into the questions. All right, our first question comes from Justin, who says, recently, a Harvard researcher offered an interesting hypothesis that aliens are already here. All right. I know a lot of people do believe that, okay? In fact, I've met some people that I do believe come from another planet, all right? He mentions 4 possibilities. A, they are an ancient civilization that has lived here for a long time. B, they are an evolved species, such as from dinosaurs. C, they are from another world or a time traveler, or D, they are spiritual beings. What if one of these were proven to be true? How would the church approach this topic? All right. So the church is not going to engage in speculative discussion. So once one of these hypotheses shows merit, then the church can begin to approach it. But I can tell you right now that the Greek Orthodox Church is going to approach this from a scientific perspective. So what they're going to look for is they're going to look for evidence. The church is not against science. You know, some people think that, it's like this, but it's not, okay? So, and a perfect example of that is this idea of exorcism. Okay, if somebody comes to me and says, Father, I've got a friend, they need to be exorcised. I'm not putting on my robe and doing an exorcism like something out of The Exorcist. No, we approach it from a very scientific standpoint. The same thing we're going to do here. So the church is really going to be silent on this until some type of definitive proof under one of these, A, B, C, or D, proves to be true. Once one of these does prove to be true, that or it's possible, then the church is going to do what she always does and very methodically and slowly investigate and determine how this fits in with God's overall plan. Drew Blanche, and this is in response to our video about Holy Communion. Do you give this alcoholic wine, how about wine that has alcohol, to children? Oh, yes, we do. Absolutely. Now, again, when we talk about the amount that they're receiving, I mean, it's maybe, if you take an eyedropper and you do it 3 times, that's the level of wine that you're going to receive, okay? So they're not drinking out of a cup, and they're not drinking, like a whole bottle or something like that of communion wine. And remember, for Orthodox, Holy Communion is the rite of the newly baptized. And most of the newly baptized are anywhere between 6 months and a year old. And yes, they are receiving communion. And on that communion spoon is wine that is 12% alcohol, all right? I have never, in my 17 years as a priest, ever seen any kind of problem with that. And all of the priests that I know, including those who have 50 years of service, have never encountered an issue with that. During service now, during liturgy, when we distribute communion, remember, it is a canon law that the wine must be diluted 50%, they don't have an exact number, but 50% with water. So the water is and that's the true Greek meaning of the word krasi. Ino is wine. Krasi is a mixture of water and wine. So this has never, ever been a problem for us in the Orthodox Church. So, and in fact, this just kind of came to mind, children's cough medicine has has probably more alcoholic content than what I'm giving them on the spoon. Ramesh Babakuta, I'm going with that. Ramesh Babakuta says, in response to our vestment series, is there any reference about these robes in the New Testament? Did either Peter or Paul, were they told about them? Why are you practicing such things? All right. It may be historical, but not biblical. It's followed by the RCM churches, and again, not, maybe Roman Catholic, I think that, and later is followed blindly by Protestants. These garments are meant for Jews who are still following the Tanakh. There's no mention of such a practice by apostles in the New Testament. Anyway, what is the use of such practices with respect to the believers in faith? All right. So, if I'm hearing this correctly, all right, so the only thing that we can do is those things that are expressly given to us in the Bible, all right? And so there are practices that have evolved over time to meet the needs of the people. Okay, so one of them is, let's say, is the marriage service, or let's take the baptismal service, okay? The baptismal service, right? Okay, where is that outlined in the Bible? Okay, so where does it say the specifics, the rubrics of how we are to do a baptism? Okay, so the earliest record we have of the actual rubrics for a baptism comes out of the Didache of the 12 Apostles, which was written after the time of Jesus. Okay, and so it says with running water. It says that they will also receive communion. Okay, that they will also have an anointing of oil. Okay, where did Jesus tell us to do that? Jesus said that you must be baptized, but in both spirit and water. Okay, but where are the specific instructions? Same thing for marriage. Okay, we have the marriage ceremony. All right, where are the specifics for that? All right, so. Did Peter and Paul and Jesus wear clothes? I think they did. Okay. Do I have pictures of Peter and Paul wearing clothes? I do not. Okay. But what we do have is we have historical documentation that says at that time, these were the typical garments that were being worn. Okay. And that the undergarment of the priest, the sticharion, is very reminiscent of what we believe Peter, Paul, the apostles, and Jesus himself to be wearing. Of course, ours has a seam. They're not seamless. All right? Okay. And then what evolves over time is an idea of recognition of a particular clerical rank. All right. So I was in the military. All right. My uniform, okay, is different from an enlisted man's uniform, okay? The cap that I wear is different from what an enlisted or an NCO would wear, okay? Why are we different? Why are we wearing all the same clothes? Because there's a distinction that needs to be made so that people can understand. So this is something that has evolved over time, all right? Now, Jesus did not say that we could not wear these vestments, all right? And Jesus did not even say what we should wear, all right? He talked more about our salvation. So there was a time in the beginning when there were no vestments, as you've seen in my vestment video, that people were just wearing what the regular Roman robes. But those evolved so that there could be then an understanding of the distinction of clergy from then lay people. And we as the church see nothing wrong in doing that. So not everything has to be specified in the Bible. Must it be biblically based? Yes. But must be expressly called out in the Bible? No. And now I'm going to put this in the wrong place. It's Enzovi or Enzovi, all right? Asks in response to our holy, this is great, you guys are watching our videos, all right, great. In response to Holy Trinity video, it sounds like God has three distinct roles. Is that correct? And the answer is one God, three persons, each with, yes, a distinct role. God the Father issues the will. The action is carried out by the Word or the Logos, which is Jesus Christ. Okay, which was the incarnation, and then for our salvation, and then the Holy Spirit then sanctifies that will which has been acted upon by Christ. So yes, it is true that God, as one in essence, does have three distinct roles in his Trinitarian sense. 7-year Orthodox catechumen. I think we've had a question from him before, I was a bit surprised to meet an Orthodox deacon who wore the white collar. I guess any Orthodox clergy can wear it. Yes. So this is indicative. This collar is indicative of an ordained position. Deacons, Orthodox deacons, are ordained as obviously priests, and bishops. Ordination begins at the deacon's role, so they are entitled to wear this clerical collar. So this clerical collar does not indicate my priesthood or the bishop's bishophood, okay? It indicates that they are a member of the clergy. It is now the vestments that they wear that will make that distinction. So the bishop will wear the engolpion, you'll see that, and that will mark him as the bishop, okay? Many times you can see both a deacon and a priest, and you may not be able to tell the difference. And you can't even say, well, the deacon's going to be younger and the priest's going to be older. I know a number of deacons who were ordained in their 50s, so you can't even say that. So it's not until the vestments are added that you can actually see that distinction. Next, we have JPJP LQ8EO, stating in response to our Elijah John the Baptist video, and he just flat out says, you're wrong. Elijah reincarnated as John the Baptist. Okay, so before we get into the Elijah and John the Baptist, let me first start by saying that Christianity does not believe in reincarnation, all right? So each person has an individual and independent soul that belongs uniquely to them, that will be reunited with them at the second coming, when the body and the soul then come together. Okay, so we don't make room for another soul to take over, so reincarnation is out, okay? So we have to start there, all right? Going to the second part, this idea, is Elijah just come back with a new name and taking John the Baptist's name, all right? Well, let's start off with John's own words. So in the Gospel of John, in John 1:18, they come to him. Now, this is the testimony of John when the Jews, John the Baptist, when the Jews sent priests and Levites to ask, who are you? And he confessed and did not deny, but confessed, I am not the Christ. And so the priests and the Levites asked him, what then are you? Are you Elijah? And his answer, I am not. Are you a prophet? No. So let's start with John's answer. And his answer was, no, I am not Elijah. I am my own person. All right. Now, let's go to Matthew. Okay. And here in Matthew, we have Jesus now speaking. Okay. And Jesus says, okay, but what do you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I say to you, and more than a prophet, for it is of he who is written, behold, I send my messenger before your face who prepare a way for you. All right? And then he talks about John the Baptist. And he says, and if you are willing to receive it, he is Elijah who is to come. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. So now it sounds like Jesus is saying he is Elijah. But wait a minute. Okay. But then here in Luke, it says, all right, in Luke chapter chapter 1, okay? So John the Baptist's birth is announced to Zechariah. And what does it say here? So the angel says to Zechariah, do not be afraid, your prayers are heard. He will turn many of, and he's talking about John the Baptist now, he will turn many of the children of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will also go before them in the spirit and the power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the fathers to the children. Okay, so what Jesus is saying here is not that he is Elijah, but like Elijah, he is coming to prepare the way for the messenger that I will send before your face. And this is what Jesus means here, not the literal of that John the Baptist is Elijah reincarnated. David Maligo, okay, I'm giving a Greek touch there, all right? How bad of a sin, I love this question, how bad of a sin is it to go to strip clubs? I know that from the Bible, fornication is a sin, but it never says anything about exotic dancing. What do you do with that one? All right. So, obviously the answer you're going to hear from priests is that yes, it is a sin to go to strip clubs. Okay, but you got to answer why. Okay, why? They're women, right? So let's answer that question. In our liturgy, we have lots of prayers, okay? We have very beautiful prayers. And before we read the gospel, okay, we have this wonderful and beautiful prayer that answers this question very succinctly, okay? Starts off with, shine in our hearts, O loving Master, the pure light of your divine knowledge, and open up the eyes of our mind that we comprehend the message of your gospel. Why? Why open up our minds, and why should we comprehend the message of your gospel? All right? So that by putting down our bodily desires, we may pursue a spiritual way of life, that we do those things and think those things that are pleasing to you. Going to a strip club and watching women dance naked is not pleasing to God. Okay? It is not putting aside our bodily desires. It is not helping us to comprehend the message of your gospel. Okay? And it is certainly dimming the light of our souls and bodies. Okay? So, is it a sin to go to a strip club? Yes. Why is it a sin? Because it is not doing those things that are pleasing to God, and in fact doing just the opposite. Panayotis Christo asks, and he prefaces this with huge question. All right, so I'm getting ready now. Let's see what we got. I know Greek culture and many other cultures have the mati, or the evil eye. Sure, it could be a weather-related, a headache, a curse, a demon. My question is, can anyone say the prayer to help, or does it have to be a priest, or is it related to the black arts and taboo? All right. So let's start backwards. It is a taboo, all right? Because last week I had a question on witchcraft, and dealing in the mati and putting curses on people is dealing in witchcraft, okay? So it is a sin, all right? So because it invokes then demonic activity, okay? And this is something that is much more powerful than any of us, and we can get ourselves into big trouble very quickly. All right. So it is a sin to delve into this idea of putting the mati on somebody. All right. However, in the Orthodox prayer book, we have a prayer that is the deliverance from the mati, or the evil eye. So there is a prayer. So many people, yes, do believe that the prayer to remove the mati does or is given by the priest. But any prayer can be said by anybody. Is it custom that the removal of the vaskania, or the evil eye, should be done by a priest or a bishop? Yes, okay. But can any person read this particular prayer? Absolutely. All right. And just very quickly, I just wanted to point out here, and this is why I say this is dabbling in witchcraft, because in the prayer itself, it says, we entreat and beseech you, O Jesus Christ, to banish, expel, and cast away from your servant every diabolical action, every satanical attack, and every evil influence caused by the spell of the evil eye from malevolent or evil people. So we tie it directly to demonic activity in the prayer. So this is why it is considered a sin. All right. And then second, he says, what about the reading of cards and astrology? That's black arts ritual. The answer is yes, because we're putting our faith in material things. We have faith only in one thing, the true and living God. As God said to the people of Israel, you don't worship a dead God, a God of the dead, you worship a God of the living. So all of these astrology, cards, all of this stuff, this is worship of dead things, of material things that makes no sense to us. We worship that which lives eternally, and that's why we reject these things. From a very scientific perspective, is that you can't put your faith in material and dead things. Claire Davis asks, in the scripture it says men shouldn't have long hair, but many priests in the Orthodox wear long hair. All right. So you are correct. Many Orthodox priests do wear long hair. Okay. It also says that women should not speak in church. All right. But we do have teachers teaching Sunday school. We do have women chanters. We do have women in the choir. Okay. So not everything that is written in Scripture now is absolutely applicable to us. Everything that Jesus has told us is applicable to us. But St. Paul is the first one to tell you that he is not the Christ. Okay? And Paul was speaking to a people who were imminently expecting the return of Jesus Christ. He told them not even to get married. I would prefer that you be like me and to be not married. All right. So he had a single focus. We're no longer at that point. Okay. So in this case, he had a very specific idea there about long hair, but it doesn't apply here for us. All right. As long as it's worn in a what am I trying to say? As long as we don't have that out in the wilderness look. All right. So. Next we have my name, my last name. Interesting. There's a way to keep anonymous. All right. Does the church keep attendance records? Well, some churches do. We did for a little while, but we no longer really keep attendance records because it's not really indicative of any true data. Just because you sit in church doesn't necessarily mean that you are also part of our community. And as you've heard me many times say, what is important in Christianity is community, is to be in communion with one another. Attendance records don't tell us that. So yes, there are churches that keep attendance, but I'm not a big believer in attendance records. Zachariah asks, can the bishop, the patriarch, confess to a priest or only to another bishop? Typically, we stay within the rank. So a deacon can confess to a deacon can't confess to a deacon, but a deacon confesses to a priest can confess to another priest, a priest can confess to a bishop. Bishops can only confess to bishops. Okay? As in the military, everybody stays within their rank. All right, and lastly, we've got user 532-523-5 says, is it okay for my children to watch fairy tales or cartoons with villains such as witches and wizards? Would King Arthur be anti-Orthodox, and if yes, are these stories demonic? All right. So, I grew up with Grimm's fairy tales, which are, pretty frightening if you read the real ones, okay? I grew up with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and there was a witch. I grew up with Wizard of Oz, okay? And I'm okay, because my parents were there to help me through it. My parents, didn't say, see that witch? That's a real witch. That can happen to you today. So, you better be careful and you better pray to Glinda, the good witch, that she'll protect you. All right? So it's okay. Now, where the church draws the line is when that becomes violent. So what we don't want our kids watching is violence perpetrated against other people. Okay? So that's where we have problem with those violent cartoons. But fairy tales, and witches and wizards, okay, that's not problematic, as long as the parents are there to explain what is the truth and what is just fantasy and fairy tale. So I just can't imagine growing up and not having seen The Wizard of Oz or a lot of the wonderful, wonderful Disney films, cartoons that have been made. So for me, that was part of my growing up. And like I said, I turned out okay. I don't believe in witches and warlocks and all of that kind of stuff. And I even saw Harry Potter, and I'm still okay. So, all right. With that ends our session for tonight. That's number 2. Join us next Thursday when we're going to have session number 3 of our Orthodoxy Questions and Answers. And remember, August 8th, we'll be back live to hear more of your very interesting and exciting questions. So until then, have a great night. We'll see you soon.